All right, Exodus 19. We've gotten up through Exodus 19. We're getting ready to get the Ten Commandments, right, in chapter 20. But there's something else that's going to take place here in Exodus 19. And again, it's one of those things as you think about where we are in the journey that the children of Israel have made so far. There's over and over and over again we keep seeing these things of how God's saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, and we see that He does every one of those things, right? When we get up to Exodus chapter 19, let's read a couple verses and then we'll get started. So Exodus chapter 19, verse 1. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. Father, we thank you for the opportunity that we have to study your word. It's been written down, preserved for us throughout the years and ages that we can have it, we can handle it, we can study it, and that we can study about you and to know you, that we can know that you are faithful to what you say, and that the promises that you make to us, that we know that that you are trustworthy and that we can believe in you and trust in you. The things that you promised us will come to pass. We thank you for this day. We thank you for your word, and we thank you most of all for Jesus Christ. It's in His name we pray. Amen. Now, as we look at this again, where are we? We're 3 months from the time that they have left Egypt, right? And so that's what we see here in verse 1. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. So they're in the wilderness of Sinai, and they're going to be down here at the bottom of this mountain for a little while, and we're going to see some stuff that's taking place here in the rest of this chapter. But what we notice here is we're 3 months out, right? So they've had a 3-month journey from that point to this point where they're actually at where they're camped before the mount in Mount Sinai there in the wilderness. Notice what we see in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt. The same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai, for they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and had pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. Now, what's going to take place is there's going to be a conversation between God and Moses here, just as we've seen so far. But notice, verse 3 says, And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Israel, and tell the children, or house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my commandment, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for the earth is mine. Now, there's a couple of things that takes place here real quick that we should probably pay attention to, right? First is Moses goes up to God. God calls him out of the mountain, and he says, Here's what I want you to tell the house of Jacob and tell the children of Israel. He says, what I want you to do is remind them of what I've done to the Egyptians, and also how that I bore you on eagle's wings to bring you to myself. Right, and what we've noticed as we've gone through is you see the cloud of smoke and the pillar of fire by night and all that stuff that we see as he's given them the path on their way to come see Him, to bring them unto Himself. Notice in verse 5 it says, Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my commandment or my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me. Notice what? Above all people. Now, we've gone through and we've talked about this issue of the timing of everything. And in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, we understand that God created the heaven and the earth. In Genesis chapter 12, what God does is He calls out Abram, and then what He's doing is He's separating unto Himself a group of people. And when we see this in verse 5 here, where it says, If you will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then. Now, what I want you to notice there is you've got this issue of what? If then. And that was always my favorite part of geometry, is to talk about proofs and all that stuff and logic. If then is a logical statement, right? And so then you have if there's some sort of condition, and then you've got some sort of conclusion that takes place if the condition's met, right? So the condition in this case is what? If you will obey my voice indeed. Now, notice there it's if what? Ye. Plural. That means what? All of you. Okay? He says, if ye, every one of you, will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant. So there's two conditions there, right? One is what? If every one of you all obey my voice indeed. And secondly, what? And keep my covenant. Then, here's the conclusion, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is what? Mine. So one of the conclusions there, and one of the things that we've always talked about is, you know, when we talk about uncircumcision and circumcision, one of the reasons that we've always kind of done it that way, Brother Jordan's done it that way, is because of that verse, because he sets them above all people. Now, here's the interesting part, is that's an if-then thing, right? So in order for him to actually set them above all people, what must they do? They must do the if, right? They have to do the if in order for that to happen. Now, notice the conclusion there is, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me. So that's an important thing, right? And you notice, and it's really interesting to me, how many conditions does he give them? 2. Obey my voice and keep the covenant. But notice, he says, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me. That's what? 1, above all people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be unto me a what? Kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. So it's not just that they're going to be a peculiar people, but or a peculiar treasure, but it's a peculiar treasure unto who? Him. Above all people. For all the earth is mine. Right? So you got a couple different things. It's not just that they're a peculiar treasure, but they're a peculiar treasure unto him and above all people. And what? Verse 6, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and a what? An holy nation. He says, here's 2 things, and if you do these 2 things, then you get all this other stuff. Not 2 things, but what? More than 2 things. And we've always talked about those things. It's interesting because, you know, when you talk about the issue of God's grace is always what? More than what we would ever deserve. Right? We talk about this. Hold your place there. Go over to Titus. It's really interesting to me. Because when you're over here in Titus chapter 2, and we've looked at these verses before, but but I want you to think about this. In Titus chapter 2, verse 12, of course, he's talking about the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared unto all men. Verse 12, what's the grace of God do? Teaching us that what? Denying ungodliness and worldly lusts. How many things does it teach us to deny? 2. We should live what? Soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. How many things do we get because of his grace? More than the 2, right? We get the 3 there. And what's interesting is when you see God's grace is always what? Providing more. We talk about that issue of abounding grace or abundance of grace. Abounding, when you start thinking about the issue of abounding, it's not just, okay, it's enough to get you by, it's what? More than enough. Every single time. And it's interesting to me because even back here with Israel, what is it that he's saying? And you stop and think about this. With Adam, God says what? Don't eat of the fruit of the tree. And then I'm going to set you up to be what? King I want to set you up to have rulership, dominion, have dominion over this stuff, be the ruler of it, take care of it, guard it, keep it, do all those things. And he's saying, I'm going to give you all these things, and all I'm asking you to do is to not do one thing. And I'm giving you all this stuff. Now, here in Exodus, it's obey my voice and deed and keep my covenant. Now, when you start thinking about that issue of obey my voice and deed, that's the thing that he's asked them to do the whole time, right? Is just trust my verses, trust my word. When I say something, believe it. That's all he's asking for, right? And to keep my covenant. When you think about keeping, if you keep something, and we're going to see what this is in just a second. When you keep something, what are you doing? If you keep something, so I'm going to keep this. You're going to possess it, right? This is now mine. I'm going to keep this forever, right? That's the idea, okay? So think about this. Then he says, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. Notice in verse 7, and Moses came and called for the elders of the people. And again, we've talked about the issue is who is it that Moses has gone back to every single time is who? Elders, right? When God first calls Moses out, he says, go to the elders, and the elders are going to do what? They're going to believe me. They're going to believe you, right? So again, Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. Now notice, and all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord hath spoken, what? We will do. So what are they saying? We're going to do what? Obey your voice and what? Keep the covenant. And here you have all the people, all the elders there. What are they saying? All the people together answered together and said, all the Lord hath spoken, we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. Now again, did God hear what all the people said? Yeah. And again, it's that issue of holding accountability, right? Verse 9. And the Lord said unto Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. Now, you stop and you think about that real quick. He says, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud. Why? That the people may hear when what? I speak with thee. Now, I want you to stop and think about what's taking place now. So far, have we had anything to do with God saying, I'm going to be able to speak to where all the other people are hearing me, or is it I'm just going to send you and to go speak to the people? So you think about that, yeah.
Just real quick, something we addressed the other day.
Yeah.
He says to them, now therefore if you will obey my voice and you keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure, and you shall be unto the kingdom of priests.
Mm-hmm.
So there's your condition. They want those things. They have to agree to them. They don't have a choice.
They do.
You don't, if you say, no, I'm not going to keep that covenant, they will not.
If you pick up that hymnal, then I'll give it to you.
Right.
You have a choice to pick it up or not.
Right. But that's the condition. There's one.
Yeah.
They could have said no,
They could have said no.
and then they would have just been the same that they're doing.
No. Because there's still going to be something. Because he's making them something.
There's a promise.
There's a promise there. Because he's promised to Abram, I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to make of you a great nation. I'm going to bring you out. I'm going to do these things.
Promise is there.
Promise was there. The law was added to the promise. Right? It was added to that. For a particular purpose, yeah. And we'll talk about that. You still have offer and acceptance, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is, he says, if you obey my voice, and what is it? You notice there in verse 8, and all the people answered together. The ye answered. The ye said, we'll do whatever God says. Right? And so then they're accepting it. And so you notice in verse 9, he says, and the Lord said to Moses, lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear me may hear when I speak with thee. He's doing this so that not just Moses hears, but what? Everybody else is hearing what God is saying to Moses. Right? Now, he says, and the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee for how long? Forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, now stop and think. What God and Moses is talking about here, who's hearing him? Who's hearing them? Everybody, right? Verse 10, and the Lord said unto Moses, so he's saying this to Moses, but who's hearing him is everybody. He says, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes. Now stop and think about what's going on. What is it that God is saying to the people is to do what? Wash your clothes. That's what he's saying, to obey my voice and keep my covenant so far as to do what? Sanctify yourselves today and tomorrow, and what? Wash your clothes. Right? That's what he's asking them to do so far. Okay? Notice, verse 11, and be ready against the third day. All right? So, what I want you to do is sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes and be ready against the third day. So what are they supposed to do today and tomorrow? Part of what they're doing is they're going to be sanctified, they're going to be washing their clothes, and then the third day they should be what? Ready. That's what he is speaking to them as of right now. He's not giving them a law yet. He's saying what? Sanctify them today and tomorrow, wash your clothes, be ready the third day. That's all he's asking of them right now, right? This is what he's saying, obey my voice and keep my covenant. Here's what I'm saying right now is do this. Now, verse 11, and be ready against the third day, for the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. Now, to me that's amazing because he says, for the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. So what is everybody going to be able to do is they're hearing the whole conversation, but in the third day, what's going to happen? They're going to be able to witness, right? The one who's been in the cloud and the pillar all along, the one that Moses has been speaking to, and the elders have said, yes, we believe that you've heard from Jehovah. I am, right? Notice, verse 12, and thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. Now, you stop and you think, does this kind of remind you of something that we've already read in Scripture? Genesis, right? God says to Adam and Moses, you can freely eat of any tree, but don't eat this one. Now, here it's different because he's saying what? Verse 12, first thing, so once they're doing all this, and when he shows up the third day, notice in verse 12, he says what? Thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about. Now, setting bounds unto the people round about, what's he talking about? Some sort of barrier, right? So I want you to put a barrier around unto the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves that ye go not up into the mountain, up into the mount. So what do you think that he's putting the bound around? The mountain. To do what? Don't go touch it. Right? And in this one, it's take heed to yourselves that ye go not up into the mount, or touch the what? The border of it. So the border is of the mount, right? The bound, if you will, is the mount there. He's saying, once you set that, don't go up to the mountain. Don't even what? Touch the border of it. The little foothills. Don't go touch them, right? You got a quizzical look on your face.
Hesitating going there. Just keep going.
All right, we'll keep going then.
I gotta hear a little more before I go.
Okay. All right. Now, what happens is if they go up into the mountain or they touch the border, what does that verse tell us will happen? They're going to die. They shall be surely put to death. Verse 13, there shall not an hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be beast or man, it shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. Now, what's he doing? Is he saying, put a border around it, don't go to the mountain, don't touch it, don't touch the bound of it, the border of it, don't touch it. Even if an animal gets up there and touches it, what happens to the animal? Stoned or shot through. Man goes up and touches it, what happens? Stoned or shot through. Right? Leaving it up to the people. You're going to make this decision, right? And it's interesting because you notice at the very end of verse 13, he says what? When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. Huh? Do what? Well, no, because we're going to see there's going to be a loud trumpet here in a second. And so the point is God's saying what? When you hear the long trumpet, then you can actually go do what? Go into the mount. But until that time, you can't. Right? We see that? Yes, no, maybe? All right. He says, when the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. Verse 14. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. So, what was the first two things that he said to do with the people is what? Sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them do what? Wash their clothes. What do they do in verse 14? Do they hearken unto his voice? Do they obey his voice? And are they keeping that particular covenant so far? Yes. Verse 15, and he said unto the people, be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. So, how long are they not allowed to go to the mountain? Those 3 days, right? And at the end of those 3 days, what happens is, what do we see? He says, verse 15 says, be ready against the third day. Verse 16, and it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders, lightnings, and thick cloud upon the mountain, the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. So for 3 days, what are they to do? Don't go touch it. On that third day, what happens is we hear the voice of the trumpet that's exceeding loud so that everybody's able to hear it, right? And what do? They trembled. Now, verse 17. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. Now, what's interesting is, well, I won't get into that, but what's interesting about this is what do we notice here? You have what? You have fire and smoke. What's the two things that they've been following this whole time? Pillar of smoke, pillar of fire. They've been following this. So when they're hearing this conversation between God and Moses, are they now understanding who it was that was leading them out? They should, right? Because they should be able to make these two things come together. And of course, what happens? The whole mount quaked greatly. Verse 19. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded what? Long. Now, you notice verse 16, what happens is the trumpet's exceeding loud, And verse 19, and when the voice of the trumpet sounded what? Long. So could you say that there was a very loud trumpet and then later on there was a loud one? Or is it one loud trump that's long? However you want to go about that, I don't think you'd be wrong either way. But what happens is there a loud trumpet sound or a long trumpet sound? And what is it that they're allowed to do once the trumpet sounds long? Then they can go up to the mountain, right? So here they are, verse 20, and the Lord came down, verse 19. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount. And the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. Now, how is it that Moses is now able to go up on the mountain? Because the trumpet was long. Trumpet sounded long, right? God commanded him up there. Before... Yeah.
And keep the covenant. He said do it, so
he had to do it. And so what happens is God doesn't say come up until after the trumpet sounds long, right? So what he's doing is he's saying here's all the ifs. He's saying I've met all the conditions, and what I'm going to ask you all to do is now you meet the conditions, right? And then those conclusions are going to come true. Now, Moses goes up into the mountain, right? Verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, go down. By the way, are the people still here in this conversation? Yeah, they should be, right? Because of what's going on. And the Lord said unto Moses, go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. So what's he saying? If they come up in the mountain and through the cloud and they see me, what's going to happen? They're going to die. And so what's he do? And by the way, do the people hear this? So your natural curiosity is to say, all right, I'm going to stay down here. Or are you going to be like, man, I just want to go see God? I mean, you'd probably be like, man, I want to go up there. I can die, but, you know. So the trumpet sounds, so Moses is able to go up. People could go up, but what he's saying now is for them to not to go through the what? Go through the clouds to see him, right? And you see that in verse 21, and the Lord said to Moses, go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. So the gaze there is they're going to have to go up through the cloud to be able to see, to try to see God and what's going to happen to them.
What that's saying is that even if one person goes up and gazes, many will perish. It doesn't specify, but it's
Well,
kind of reads.
lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. So the ones that walk up and try to go up there to try to sneak a peek, what's going to happen to them? Right? They would perish. All right? Verse 22, and let the priests also, which come near to the Lord, sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses said unto the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, set bounds about the mount, and sanctify it. And the Lord said unto him, away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aaron with thee, but let not the priests and the people break through to come up unto the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. Now, when he says this, Moses is saying, yeah, but you told us not to come up. Is that true? You can't come up until after the trumpet. Could they come up now? So is Moses 100% correct in what he said? Did he leave something out there? You told us that we can't come up except there's the long trumpet, right? So he's saying, and the point what Moses is trying to say is what? Well, you told us not to, and we're going to keep what you said because our elders said, tell us what God wants to do, and we're going to do it. And what Moses is saying what? Well, you told us not to come to the mountains, so we're not going to come up. They're not going to come up because you've already told them that. But had the trumpet sounded long, so could they then go and do that? That's what allowed Moses to get up there, right? So there's something there, yeah.
Could it be that they went to the border?
Mm-hmm.
base of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing it on the base of the mountain.
Yeah.
Is that where the border was set up at the base? They never passed that border?
They wouldn't have. They wouldn't have. But
So when they called the trumpet, they all ran to the edge of the barricade line.
and they could have touched the border and they could have touched the mountain.
Right. And they say,
But they don't. They're not to go up, right? Yeah. Yeah.
but the voice of the Lord, are they hearing his voice? Or
They're hearing his. Yeah.
Are they hearing the trumpeting sound?
Well, it would be both. It would be both. But it because you see you see back up in verse 9 where he says, and the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak.
Right. They didn't
So
hear that language. They just hear it because again, I'm probably off on a bad
no, you're fine.
thing.
You're fine.
The voice, or look at the voice, it sounds, it says a loud noise like a bleeding sound or a crackling fire.
Um,
Would they be hearing what they understand, or would they just be hearing like a loud?
well, so when
Moses understands it, the others don't, so I'm trying to get it.
okay, I got you. So just based on what it says back there in verse 9 is the purpose that the purpose that they're going to be able to hear him is that they can hear him speak. Like they're hearing him say to Moses this conversation. Now, there is a voice of the trumpet, right? You got the voice of the trumpet there. That would be a separate thing. So you got the voice of the trumpet that says once that voice of the trumpet sounds long, then they can go up and they can touch the mountain. But then still God's having that conversation with Moses too. So it'd be both.
They hear all that.
They would hear all that. Yeah.
They know when they hear the long trumpet.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's that point of you can't touch it until you hear the loud sound of the trumpet. And once you hear the loud sound of the trumpet, then they could go up to the border and they could even touch it. But here he's saying, you told us not to come up. Right? And of course that's what he's charging them to do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In 10, verse 10, when it says, "Go to the people and sanctify them," did you explain what he was saying about sanctify them? Did he mean like bathe them, or like what did he mean by sanctify them?
Well, sanctify them. Anytime you have sanctify is to set them apart for a particular purpose, right? So the purpose here that he's setting them apart for is to be able to do what? To do the things that God commands them to do.
So sanctify would just be like educate them, talk to them.
Well, it's to set them apart for a particular purpose. Anytime you see sanctify, it's the same thing that when he talks about our sanctification, we're set apart for a particular purpose. Here they have a particular purpose to do what? To heed to what God says, to keep his covenants, and then they're going to be above all people and peculiar people and all that stuff. So they're going to be set apart. So he's preparing them for that part.
It is like him preaching to them today and tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
clarity on like what that exactly meant.
I got you. Yeah.
Secondly, in verse 15, when he says, "Come not at your wives," does that mean like don't play with them?
I would assume so, yeah. Yeah. I would assume so.
Is there any reason why he says that right now?
They're gonna obey, probably.
Well, the interesting thing is Moses says that, but do we have anything in there where God says to do that?
I mean, well, Moses,
Because this is Moses saying it to him, right?
yeah, but Moses says a lot of things that like we don't have a pretty conversation where he speaks to God
Yeah.
about, but we just assume God told Moses that, right?
And so it could possibly be a part of that sanctification too. Because as he's doing that, and what's interesting in verse 14, he says, Moses went down from the mount unto the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And then, and he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day, come not at your wives. I don't know. That's a good question. We'll ask him one day. But I mean, I would take it as that, but I don't know. Like we're not told specifically that God doesn't say tell them this too, but Moses does say that. So it's possible he got that from God too and said it, or that's a good assumption. Yeah, yeah.
And then lastly, the trumpet sounding. Is there any evidence of what the trumpet is? Is the trumpet an angel playing the trumpet? Like, is there someone with God playing that trumpet?
So
Does the trumpet just play
Well, so there's a couple things that go along with that. One is going to be the presence. You also have the trump of God, but then you also have angels that are also trumpeting too, right? So there's a couple different ones that you've got. So like in Revelation, you got the 7 trumps, and those are all angels that are, doing their little thing. And then you've also got the trump of God, which calls us out and things like that. So there would always be that, but every one of those would have something to do with the presence there.
But, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I just,
But I don't know.
does this like aura of presence like create a trumpet sound, or is there just an angel, a group of angels playing the trumpet?
Well, I would take it as something to do with an angel. Angel would have something to do with that, yeah. I don't know if just God showing up is, you got this, the trumpet sound from there, but it would be an announcement of presence, if you will.
Is the trumpet indicative of like a musical instrument of God? Like, is it like a God's instrument maybe?
It's one of them, yeah. I mean, you think about like when Lucifer was created, right? He was created with all these things that could make music. And since he fell, then he would have to have somebody else that would have that ability to also make that music somehow. So God does, obviously, because you got the trump of God, but you also have the angels would also be able to trumpet as well. But that's a good question too. I mean, there's the instance there that what we see is even when they're preparing for his presence in Revelation, that's part of the 7 trumpets out there. When the trump of God, when the trump goes off and then we go up, we're going to be in his presence. There's always that issue of presence there. But I don't know if God shows up somewhere, there's always a trumpet sound. That's a good question though.
On the
Something to look
thing
at.
you were saying before, I think it was Moses saying it, because it's been pretty clear that it was God saying it. And I think he was just smart enough to know that if guys was laying with their wives, then
They wouldn't be
there
ready?
would be a chance of high probability that there would be soilage on the clothes.
Well, it's not just that,
They might
yeah.
just be protecting their own selves by saying, hey, don't even do that.
It's
Don't chance
possible.
it."
It's possible with that, but it's also the fact of you got to be ready on that 3rd day, right? So yeah, that could be something along with that too. Yeah, David.
So, I was thinking about where they are on the mountain,
Mm-hmm.
to wash their clothes. First thing that comes to my mind is where's the water from? See, I'm wondering when I read that.
They're not in the mountain. They're at the base of the mountain,
Right.
right?
Like there's a stream coming down from the rock.
So there would be water there for them to be able to do that.
But
Yeah.
is that of further significance, rather than just wash your clothes?
Is it symbolic of something?
I'm sure it has something to do with the sanctification part about the washing away and setting up for a water issue later on. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Could it be the same water that came out of the rock back in chapter 17? Are they
If they took it with them, possibly. I mean, we know they, huh?
know they're inside there?
Yeah, they're in Sinai. They're over in the wilderness in Sinai.
That stream coming out of the mountain, there's a stream.
So I mean, they would have water. I don't know if it'd be that they would have carried some from where they were in chapter 17, but we'll kind of see. Hang on a second. I didn't get Raymond's yet. Oh, I thought you had a question. No? Okay.
Statement. What is the idea of them cleansing their clothes, washing their clothes? Also, generally, if parallel or speaks to like mankind being unclean and holy, so like representing, that they need to be at least physically cleansed in order to come into the presence of the holy, sinless perfect God, and like, why then being dirty, they couldn't come into his presence.
Yeah, because I mean, and you could take that. So that's the whole point with the sanctifying, right? And that's why I was like, probably with that. But you also got to think is Why do they even have clothes? Is because of what Adam and Eve did, right? So you could take it all the way back to that if you wanted to. And so then, even then, there were some things that were supposed to take place with that. So it could be any of that.
New wine and the old skins.
Yeah.
Like, why cleanse your body and then put dirty clothes back on?
Yeah. And I think it's all part of that sanctification process, yeah.
So, I really want to clear this up in my mind for a while, and now that we're on this subject, so, when we talk about the nation being under covenant or not, when you say he was dealing with the nation, today he deals with us in this age as individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So when you said back then, when we always say the nation this and the nation that, the covenant, did he mean every individual in that nation had to abide by it for that nation be considered that, or is that like a symbolic of individualism? You know what I mean? We always talk about the nation being under covenant or the nation not. So when it comes to obeying the covenant, does every single person have to abide by that for the nation to be considered under it? You see what I'm
So then there's two things. There's two aspects to it. You have the nation plural, all of them together, but then you would also have individuals too. So like when when Daniel's praying, and he's praying for his sins and the sins of his people, right? So you had both of those at that time back then. So everything that God did with the nation had to do, otherwise the nation doesn't get. Right? And if the nation doesn't get, then the nation can't do what God wants them to do.
But if the nation doesn't get, does that mean like everybody gets or doesn't, or individual?
As far as those things, but then you also had the individual thing too. And so then, like when you get over to Matthew or John chapter 3, because both of those are going to be involved, but John chapter 3, when he talks about being born again, right, he's talking about the nation must be born again. We've already read about, and we didn't get into it, and I kind of wish we had, but when the nation is born, when they come out of Egypt through the Red Sea, right, they're born as a nation then. Over in John chapter 3, when he's talking about ye must be born again, he's not talking about an individual person. He's talking about the nation would have to be born again. But you, yes, yeah. But then also each individual person in that should also be sanctified, set apart, quickened, and all that stuff, made alive. So you would have that too. Yeah. And so the problem would be is the reason, and what's interesting is, and we'll see this once we get over to Leviticus, all it takes for the nation to get into the first, remember, I forget when it was, months ago, we did the 5 courses of judgment, probably about a year or so ago now. I'm shocked at how much time has passed now. I look back and I'm like, we did this series like 3 weeks ago. No, it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I'm like, good grief, time's flying by way too fast. But when we talked about that, the reason that the whole nation got under the first course of punishment is because everybody in the nation didn't do what they're supposed to do. And so everybody was punished. Even if you did right, the whole nation, because he's doing something specifically with that nation to do what? To make them a peculiar treasure unto him above all people, and that they would be a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. He's doing something specifically to show here's what a nation can look like if they actually follow God. And I'm going to do all this to show you how to do all that. And that's what he's done so far.
Some individuals in the nation, when it comes to the covenant agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
The conditional covenant agreement. So some individuals, they were all under the covenant arrangement as everybody, but some would obey individuals and some wouldn't. So would the punishment for that come upon everybody
Yes.
in the nation, even the people who
If you had 1 billion people and one person didn't do it as a nation, the whole nation would suffer. But the 1 billion people minus the one, they actually have something else that would be theirs too. So they're punished as a nation, but they're also glorified as a nation when they do.
Seems like an elementary question.
No, it's not.
I wonder about that, how the context of it.
Because you have both of those things involved. So as a nation, you're going to suffer as a nation, but individually you'll have something. Yeah.
Is that where not all
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why you get into that over there. And just because they're descendants of Abraham doesn't mean that they're Israel, because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So as a nation, God's going to do something specific with them.
So this isn't all rectified until the second half?
Yeah. Well, when that new covenant's brought in and all that.
We're all looking, okay, when will this happen? Okay, no, none of it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we just take a look, you remember when we talked about that before, like the 5 courses of judgment, they're in the 5th course of judgment when Christ is on the earth. And that's one of the things I've said. It's amazing when you stop and think about it, how merciful God was to the nation of Israel that rejected him. Is he put on pause the 5th course of judgment that Israel was under for the last 2,000 years. And then he's going to pick back up with that after the rapture. He's given them almost 2,000 years period of time of relief from those 5 courses of judgment. That's how great the dispensation of grace is.
Tribulation technically is against Israel, but it will spill over.
And everybody's going to be involved, yeah. Because everybody's going to be impacted. Everybody's going to be impacted, yeah. Yeah. So we've only got one verse left in chapter 19, and it's a profound one. So Moses went down unto the people and spake unto them. But I mean, and again, what I want you to think about is in this case, what is it that God told them that they were to take heed to is what? Build a boundary, don't touch the mountain, don't touch the border until the trumpet sounds. When the trumpet sounds, then they can go and do that, right? Now, what did they do? Seemingly, it looks like that's exactly what they did, right? Did they hearken unto his voice? Did they keep that covenant? Now, of course, what's going to take place in chapter 20 is God's going to say, okay, now I'm going to give you the law. And there's a reason that he's doing that, and he's going to give them that law, and we'll see that a little bit later on. And so then, if you do this, then, so what he's doing is he's adding it to what he's just already done in chapter 19. Huh? Now, at one time, as a small child, you would have wanted to have touched something that you were told not to touch, right? Don't touch the stove. Ah, that's hot. Don't touch it. Nah, it's hot. It's still hot, right? Eventually, there's something that you're going to be told. And Adam and Eve, right? Eventually, our nature now is it. How many times have you heard somebody say, "Well, I wouldn't even think about doing that. Have you not told me not to do it?"
Yeah.
Right? Don't run down the street. Well, I guess I want to run down the street now because I never thought that's that idea, right? But what he's doing is he's saying, don't go and touch it. Don't touch the border. And seemingly what we see here is that they don't, right? Trumpet sounds long. Moses goes up and has a conversation with God. Then he comes back down and tells them exactly what was going on. And then we see the 10 Commandments that show up here in chapter 20. All right.
In verse 9, where the people are going to hear God's voice, he's talking to Moses, and it says, so that they would believe Moses forever.
Mm-hmm.
Do they?
No. And we see that in the next chapter. All right. It doesn't last long. But the point is that they do. Are there some that did believe? Yeah. Are there still some today that believe Moses? Yeah. Huh? That the people may hear when I speak? Yeah. Yeah. They may not pay attention.
You know,
It is.
Really, with this whole book. I mean, it's just easy to get caught up in the details of the Bible sometimes, which are important
Yeah.
to get an overall picture. But it's amazing, this whole book. It's about the character of God himself. And it's pretty in-depth,
Yeah.
right?
And you see it put on display
Yeah.
over and over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. You looking for a question? Mary was looking intently in there, making sure.
Number 5, verse 5, when it says, if ye will obey my voice, and then it's like you, above all people,
Mm-hmm.
is that happen, or is that also delayed?
Well, what's interesting about this is God's already set them up anyway, in spite of that. But what he's wanting to do is to be able to set, and it's interesting because he says, then you shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. Well, from this point on, even back from Abram, from that point on, has there been a separation between those two groups? And it's gone on until Paul comes along and all that, right? So he's done it even in spite of that, because he's showing who he is as God. Because he made a promise to Abram that I'm going to make of you a great nation. Right?
So the Great Tribulation is based on, since it's future right now, so like, is he still considering, like, the punishment upcoming in the Great Tribulation is a completion of the punishment that was going on before, right?
It's the culmination of the 5 courses, yeah.
So during the Great Tribulation, with everything that's been going on, so Israel is kind of still his preferred people in the Great Tribulation, because it's really intended for them, but it's just going to spill over to everybody
Well,
else.
everybody's going to be affected, yeah. Just like they were back here. I mean, God's doing something with Israel, but Egypt is extremely affected, right? And each of the,
So the whole world will be affected by
it will
the
be.
Great Tribulation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because you've got Gentile powers,
Expanded everything.
the Gentile powers are going to be extremely affected, just as Egypt was back there.
Because they're gonna try to be lording over Israel, try to take control just like Egypt did.
Yeah.
They're gonna be meddling in God's business.
Yeah. And what's interesting is now he's not doing that, right?
Trying to give everybody a chance here to deal with their plan business, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that the 70th week of Daniel, that's just the culmination of the 5 courses of judgment come to an end, and then you have all the things that take place after that. Yep. And the thing is we've not even gotten to that part yet in Leviticus, but it's really interesting. I'm really enjoying Exodus, but I really can't wait to get to Leviticus. Numbers, not so much. Numbers might just be, we're going to read stuff and just go. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But there's some really good stuff in there too, though. And it's in there for a reason, obviously. Yeah, and then Deuteronomy, I'm looking forward to that too. I'm looking forward to Numbers, but obviously there's other things involved there too. So, all right.